Industrialization stirred ambitions in many European nations. They wanted more resources to fuel their industrial production. They competed for new markets for their goods. Many nations looked to Africa as a source of raw materials and as a market for industrial products. As a result, colonial powers seized vast areas of Africa during the 19th and early 20th centuries. The seizure of a country or territory by a stronger country is called imperialism. As occurred throughout most of Africa, stronger countries dominated the political, economic, and social life of the weaker countries. Though Europeans wanted to venture into Africa, travel into the interior on a large-scale basis was virtually impossible. Europeans could not navigate African rivers, which had many rapids, cataracts, and changing flows. The introduction of steam-powered riverboats in the early 1800s allowed Europeans to conduct major expeditions into the interior of Africa. Disease also discouraged European exploration. Those Europeans who did penetrate the interior of Africa were explorers, missionaries, or humanitarians who opposed the European and American slave trade. Europeans and Americans learned about Africa through travel books and newspapers. These publications competed for readers by hiring reporters to search the globe for stories of adventure, mystery, or excitement. Henry Stanley was a newspaper reporter from the United States who set out to explore Africa and trace the course of the Congo River. His efforts sparked the interest of King Leopold II of Belgium, who he helped to acquire lands in the Congo. Leopold puts the Africans living on these lands to work for him, but his brutal treatment led to the death of millions. As punishment, the Belgian government took the colony away from Leopold. This alarmed some European nations, as they had already made claim to lands along the banks of the Congo River. The Industrial Revolution gave European nations a reason to add colonies to their control. They were in search of places that would add new markets and raw materials to improve their new industrialized economies. The race for colonies also grew out of a strong sense of national pride. Europeans viewed an empire as a measure of national greatness. As the competition for colonies intensified, each country was determined to plant its flag on as much of the world as possible. Many Europeans believed that they were better than other peoples. The belief that one race is superior to others is called racism. The attitude was a reflection of social Darwinism, a social theory of the time. In this theory, Charles Darwin's ideas about evolution and survival of the fittest were applied to human society. Those who were fittest for survival enjoyed wealth and success and were considered superior to others. According to the theory, non-Europeans were considered to be on a lower scale of culture and physical development because they had not made the scientific and technological progress that Europeans had. Europeans believed that they had the right and the duty to bring the results of their progress to other countries. Several factors contributed to the Europeans' conquest of Africa. One overwhelming advantage was the Europeans' technological superiority. The Maxim gun, invented in 1884, was the world's first automatic machine gun. European countries quickly acquired the Maxim, while the resisting Africans were forced to rely on outdated weapons. European countries had the means to control their empire. The invention of the steam engine allowed Europeans to easily travel on rivers to establish bases of control deep in the African continent. Even with superior arms and steam engines to transport them, another factor might have kept Europeans confined to the coast. They were highly susceptible to malaria, a disease carried by the dense swarms of mosquitoes in Africa's interior. The perfection of the drug quinine in 1829 eventually protected Europeans from becoming infected with this disease. Factors within Africa also made the continent easier for Europeans to colonize. Africans' huge variety of languages and cultures discouraged unity among them. Wars fought between ethnic groups over land, water, and trade rights also prevented a unified stand. Europeans soon learned to play rival groups against each other. The discovery of diamonds in 1867 and gold in 1886 in South Africa increased European interest in colonizing the continent. The competition was so fierce that European countries feared war among themselves. To prevent conflict, 14 European nations met at the Berlin Conference in 1884 to lay down rules for the division of Africa. They agreed that any European country could claim land in Africa by notifying other nations of its claims and showing it could control the area. By 1914, only Liberia and Ethiopia remained free from European control. When European countries began colonizing, many believed that Africans would soon be buying European goods in great quantities. They were wrong. Few Africans bought European goods. However, European businesses still needed raw materials from Africa. The major source of great wealth in Africa proved to be the continent's rich mineral resources. The Belgian Congo contained untold wealth in copper and tin. Even these riches seemed small compared with the gold and diamonds in South Africa. Businesses eventually developed cash crop plantations to grow peanuts, palm oil, cocoa, and rubber. These products displaced the food crops grown by farmers to feed their families. From the late 1700s to the late 1800s, a series of local wars shook southern Africa. Around 1816, a Zulu chief named Shaka used highly disciplined warriors and good military organization to create a large centralized state. Shaka's successors, however, were unable to keep the kingdom together against the superior arms of the British invaders. The first Europeans to settle in South Africa had been the Dutch. The Dutch came to the Cape of Good Hope in 1652 to establish a way station for their ships sailing between the Dutch East Indies and the Netherlands. Dutch settlers, known as Boers, gradually took Africans' lands and established large farms. When the British took over the Cape Colony permanently in the early 1800s, they and the Boers clashed over British policy regarding land and slaves. Diamonds and gold were discovered in southern Africa in the 1860s and the 1880s. Suddenly, adventurers from all parts of the world rushed in to make their fortunes. The Boers tried to keep these outsiders from gaining political rights. An attempt to start a rebellion against the Boers failed. The Boers blamed the British and in 1899 took up arms against them. In many ways, the Boer War, also known as the South African War, between the British and the Boers was the first modern total war. The Boers launched commando raids and used guerrilla tactics against the British. The British countered with burning Boer farms and imprisoning women and children in disease-ridden concentration camps. Britain finally won the war. In 1910, the Boer republics were joined into a self-governing union of South Africa, which was controlled by the British.